When we picture depression, we imagine specific symptoms: profound sadness, frequent tearfulness, or an inability to even get out of bed in the morning. But psychological distress in teenagers rarely follows that pattern. It hides in plain sight, blending into the everyday friction of growing up. Instead of weeping, teens might slam doors, snap at their parents, or aggressively say, "I don't care." Because this looks like stereotypical teenage rebellion, adults often react with discipline. We ground them, we take away their phones, and we treat them as if they are simply being difficult. When we judge teenagers by an adult standard of sadness, we miss the disease entirely. We treat a quiet medical crisis as a behavioral problem to be punished. Misreading these signals has devastating consequences. Vulnerable children are left to navigate their distress alone, driving a drastic increase in youth mortality. Look at this area chart tracking local public health data here in Georgia. Over the last decade alone, the adolescent suicide rate in the state has spiked 30%. These statistics represent children who slipped through the safety net while the adults in their lives were watching for the wrong warning signs. This failure to recognize the true face of teen depression is a fatal public health blind spot. The medical community has explicitly addressed this difference. The Standard Clinical Manual for Psychological Diagnosis, the DSM-5, differentiates youth symptoms from adult symptoms. For adolescents specifically, the manual includes a critical clinical carve-out. An irritable mood is officially permitted to substitute for a depressed mood when making a diagnosis. This irritability is often paired with confusing physical symptoms. A teenager might complain of severe stomach aches or intense headaches with no apparent biological cause. You will also see quiet behavioral shifts, like a sudden change in appetite, erratic sleep schedules, or pulling away from their friends. Teenage depression is an insidious, full-body condition that masks itself as adolescent angst. Identifying it requires a completely different clinical lens. This presents a logistical problem. If clinical depression mimics typical teenage rebellion, how can a parent or a teacher objectively figure out what is actually happening? We use an objective medical tool to cut through the subjective noise. This is the PHQ-9, and its youth version, the PHQ-A. It's a validated clinical screener that takes roughly 5 minutes to complete. The data behind this tool is so reliable that the American Academy of Pediatrics officially recommends this routine screening for all adolescents ages 12 and older. Because it relies on targeted questions rather than a heated conversation, it bypasses the emotional friction of an argument and provides a valid picture of clinical severity. Objective screening tools are the only reliable way to translate a teenager's hostile "I don't care" into a measurable, actionable medical metric. We have to measure it because untreated adolescent depression has a severe long-term trajectory. It is strongly linked to chronic depression in adulthood and lifelong struggles with substance use. In the short term, it shows up in the classroom. Previously high-achieving students will watch their grades slide as they lose the baseline energy required to engage with schoolwork. Early screening is a high-leverage prevention tool, but identifying the problem is ineffective if a family then faces months of waiting lists to receive actual help. Screening for distress without providing immediate, accessible intervention leaves the tragedy in place, merely adding another name to the statistics. This is the gap that MentalSpace Sch is designed to bridge. They act as modern public health infrastructure across Georgia to ensure that screening leads directly to treatment. Their delivery model embeds telehealth directly within the K-12 school environment. It connects students to licensed therapists without requiring a visit to a clinic waiting room. This removes financial barriers, as major insurances and zero-cost Medicaid make help instantly accessible. By updating our definition of depression to include irritability, screening universally, and integrating care right into our schools, we can stop punishing teenagers for suffering and start saving them.